Introduction to Muay Thai Boran stance and footwork. The noble art of Muay Thai Boran is renowned for its powerful offensive techniques of punching, elbowing, kneeing and kicking, as well as, in some forms, headbutting. While these techniques are unequivocally integral to the indomitable system, they are of little value without the fundamental skills of proper stances and footwork. These are the skills that facilitate the effective delivery of the weapons systems. Before one is capable of the distinctive flowing nine-weapon offensives, the tricky evasive maneuvers and rapid-fire counterattacks of the heralded art, they must first develop perhaps the most neglected and underappreciated skills of all, stance or Kum Chung, and footwork or Jod Muay. The unglamorous, and oft overlooked elements of stance, footwork, balance, weight distribution and transfer, proprioception, spatial awareness and hip maneuvering, are critically important to the art of kings. At the very foundation of Muay Thai Boran's doctrine is proper manipulation of the organism through correct postures and footwork. It is footwork that makes the dynamic movements of the art possible, because, with some stylistic exceptions, such as those in the Muay Thai style meaning pillar boxing, a stationary attack or defense is largely non-conducive to survival in combat, much less victory. The feet and legs function as a turret which mobilizes the weapons to bring them into effective range, while avoiding the attacks of the opponent. This more dynamic and transitory style of evasive maneuvering is known as Muay Thai, meaning encircling boxing, or Blagat, which is a reference to the fighting style of Siamese Bedu fighting fish. Muay Thai Boran consists of an amalgamation of the 5 primary regional lineages of the martial art. As such, the stances found within the varied curriculum of the art are non-uniform and varied. Some styles emphasize a wider, more squared stance, known in Thai as Lim Na, while others have a predilection for narrower bladed stances, which are called Lim Bang. Some stances, such as those of the Muay Thai Sao style, emphasize a more erect posture, while other styles utilize stances with a lower center of gravity. One notable extreme example of a lowered posture can be found in the Muay Thai regional style. This stance, known as the tiger dragging its tail Seul Akang, consists of the practitioner adopting a combative posture that is as low to the ground as one can get while still remaining on the feet. Muay Thai Boran footwork consists of steps, slides, shuffles, lunges, skips and hops. All of these methods of locomotion serve to efficiently move the organism in every direction, in specific ways and addressing various requisites of combat and strategical predilections. The most fundamental kind of footwork, called in the Thai language, is the sliding step. These steps lay the groundwork and principles for correct footwork. They consist of first setting in motion the foot closest to the direction you intend to move towards and following with the other foot. To elucidate this principle, starting from the orthodox stance, meaning the left arm and leg are forward, take a step forward with the lead foot, then follow with the rear foot to re-establish the stance and guard. Another example of proper footwork, again beginning from the orthodox stance, would be moving the rear foot to the right, then following with the lead foot back into the Kum Chung or guard position. These principles allow the combatant to advance and sidestep to the inside respectively, and are applicable in all directions. Footwork serves to control distance for attacks, and to facilitate defensive maneuvers and counterattacks. It must be accompanied by a functional knowledge of your center of gravity and weight distribution. The human organism's center of gravity lies on a non-localized axis that shifts with every movement. Contrary to popular belief and common martial arts practice, true balance cannot be mastered by fixed or stationary postures alone. While these poses surely develop static balance and proprioception, they are all but useless in the dynamic chaos of actual combat. The balance possessed by the Thai stylist is a dynamic balance, which can be maintained while in motion and under the duress of strikes and stand-up grappling maneuvers. Nak Muay develop their proprioception not with the static postures found in other arts, but rather with footwork drills, coupled with the execution of the pertinent techniques. This practice of shadow boxing is known in Thai as Lenlam, The techniques require specialized locomotive balance to be performed correctly and effectively. Another crucial aspect of controlled and stable combat locomotion is a practical understanding of the skeletal articular system of the weaponized human organism. This knowledge avails the practitioner the ability to manipulate the body in a biometrically advantageous manner and exploit the adversary's errors. It is imperative that the student acquires a cognizance of the structural mechanism of the hip above all else. The ability to powerfully engage the hip in the deployment of bodily force is a hallmark of Muay Thai Boran's methodology. This skill is achieved by cultivating a knowledge of foot positioning, weight distribution and kinetic linking by muscular contraction and articular alignment. At the structural level, the Muay Thai Boran exponent possesses the ability to open or unlock the hip. An open or unlocked hip facilitates a powerful and unobstructed pivoting of the body. A closed or locked hip, of course, hinders the ability to rotate the body. Opening and closing the hips is controlled by the relative placement of the feet. Depending upon where the toes point, as well as the type of stance being used and the side which will be delivering the strike, the hip may be considered to be open or closed. If, for example, the practitioner is in an orthodox stance with his lead foot facing 1 o'clock on a watch dial, the hip is opened for a lead side offensive movement. However, the hip is closed to the anatomically advantageous delivery of a rear side attack. On the other hand, if the toes point towards 11 o'clock or so, the hip is opened for rear side weapons, but closed to biomechanically sound lead offensives. Attempting to initiate attacks with closed hips will significantly reduce the potential impetus of the blow and potentially compromise the structural integrity of the knee under the antagonistic rotational strain. Proper footwork and hip mobilization are made possible by the Thai stylists' relative foot position. The art of Muay Thai Boran has many regional styles and stances, as well as forms of footwork in their arsenals. However, in general, they employ a combat movement which is constructed on attacking and evading on the balls of the feet to propel the movements and, with some exceptions, the weight of the body is typically not on the entire foot surface. This practice allows the fighter to freely swivel to heels in order to open the hips and augments their ability to efficiently, powerfully and expeditiously set the body into motion. The raised heel acts as a chambered rounding a firearm ready to pull the trigger and allows for rapid offensive, defensive and counter-offensive maneuvers as well as evasive movements. Finally, the weight distribution of the Thai stylist is oscillatory and constantly shifting based on the intent of the movement. Weight transfer is intrinsically connected to the balance and footwork of all forms of combat, be it offensive, defensive or counter-offensive. A general ratio of 60% on the rear foot and the remaining 40% on the lead is utilized. However, this is a very inadequate quantification as Thai stylists often lift the foot and place the weight entirely on the rear leg in different types of offensive and defensive techniques. Examples of this aberration can be seen in the Kru Nick master's posture and the Muay Thai horse trotting footwork. The transfer of the weight may be in different percentages depending on the intent and nature of the action. In conclusion, the secret to Muay Thai Boran's dynamic and incredibly effective fighting methods lies in the fundamentals of stance, footwork, balance and kinetic structural mechanisms that are unfortunately not trained sufficiently in many gyms. The fact is, without developing the fundamentals delineated herein, much of the effectiveness of offensive, defensive and counter-offensive elements of Muay Thai Boran are lost. We shall now examine stances and footwork in a more in-depth manner.